you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this informational webinar on the transition to career clusters and course code mapping. Next slide. I'm Irene Parisi. I serve as the Chief Academic Officer for the Academic Office and the Department. I'm joined by my colleagues, Ajit Gopalakrishnan, our Chief Performance Officer, Kylie Freeman in our CTE Perkins Office, Sean McEwen in our CTE Perkins Office, Dr. Samuel Kamen who manages CTE Perkins data in the Performance Office, and Renee Savoy managing Next Generation Accountability in the Performance Office. Next slide. Within the next 15 slides or so, the purpose is going to be to explain the new career clusters framework, to share with you how we might transition and implement the career clusters and subclusters. We will explain the data collection, reporting, and accountability, as well as share with you how to modernize family consumer science going forward. Now I'd like to invite my colleague Sean to talk about the framework.
Thank you very much, Irene. A lot has changed in the world of education and work that require changes to the structures that govern CTE. The vision for the new framework was to reflect the increasingly interdisciplinary nature of work and to remove silos, to update language to better connect CTE programs and industry, to reflect and recognize new and emerging industry sectors, to be industry responsive, to focus on skilled living wage occupations and careers, and prepare learners for careers of the future. You will notice a strong emphasis on the idea of industry forward or industry driven framework, which is a shift from the previous framework. The original framework was very prescriptive and built for education. However, CTE programs are most successful if learners can be placed in an occupation or career that leads to a livable wage and vertical career advancement. That requires being responsive to the changing needs of industry, and the modernized framework was designed with industry needs in sector-specific language. This framework will connect every part of career and technical education, from middle grades, secondary, post-secondary, and workforce programs, so everyone is using the same language. The modernized National Career Clusters framework has been visually organized in this graphic. The framework's layers begin in the center and become more specified as you travel towards the outside of the circle. We will get into more of each of the layers of this framework in just a minute. The modernized framework is now based on 14 career clusters and 72 subclusters, which organize and describe the world of work, bridging back to secondary and post-secondary CT programs at the state and local levels. Let's look at the framework layers in this diagram. The career-ready practices, located in the bullseye of the graphic, are 21st century durable skills that are commonly included in most of your visions or portraits of a graduate. They are the core or the nucleus of all CTE programming and are not a standalone practice, but rather embedded into each CTE classroom, lab, work-based learning, or career and technical student organization experience. The cluster groupings are intended to help learners see and explore possible careers that are aligned with their interests and their sense of purpose. There's been a lot of excitement on how these groupings can be used not only in CTE, but beyond CTE in helping our learners see the relevance of their work. We will look at the career clusters, the cross-cutting clusters, and our subclusters throughout the next few slides. You can notice the cluster groupings are organized by color before each of the modernized career clusters. In orange, you will see the cluster grouping of building and moving, which includes the career clusters of advanced manufacturing, construction, and supply chain and transportation. In dark pink, we have creating and experiencing. This includes the clusters of arts, entertainment, and design, in addition to hospitality, events, and tourism. In gold, we have investing for the future, which only does include financial services. In blue, the cluster grouping is caring for communities, which includes education, healthcare and human services, and public service and safety. In green, the cluster grouping is cultivating resources, which includes agriculture and energy and natural resources. And in purple, we have what are called connecting and supporting success, or also known as our cross-cutting clusters. This is including digital technology, marketing and sales, and management and entrepreneurship. These are the outer layer of that circular framework, creating an innovative cross-cutting concept of clusters that have impact or have a place in all other industry sectors. Just think, how can any area of hospitality, events, and tourism function or exist without a marketing or sales division, or any sector of advanced manufacturing not integrating digital technology practices into their daily operations? All modernized career clusters are focused on specific industry sectors and careers that align with them. LEAs and CT programs will use the clusters as a basic groupings for their CT programs. And in the next slide, we'll categorize our subclusters underneath each one of our clusters. Each of the career clusters has a series of related subclusters, which are groupings of career areas within a given field that have similar skills and defined by industry area. We have also aligned all CTE courses to at least one subcluster, recognizing that many courses can be mapped to more than one subcluster or even cluster. Flexibility for CTE program design and growth was at the center of our work. One key change, in addition to the language shift from the term pathway to subcluster, is the size of each of one of these subcluster layers. More career fields fit into the subcluster than was previously referred to as pathways, which allows exposure and preparation for a wider range of occupations. Kylie Freeman will now help create connections to where we came from to where we are moving forward.
Thank you, Sean. It is important to understand that with this new shift to the modernized framework, every cluster that once was a part of the CT programming has a new home or new understanding that fits into a broader context across several clusters. If you notice the left side of this table, it includes the name of the legacy career clusters from the old framework that are in the final years of use in Connecticut's Perkins State Plan. The right side of the table shows the new cluster names in the modernized framework, thus creating a simple crosswalk between the two. You may notice STEM is no longer a standalone cluster because STEM careers exist in several clusters such as healthcare and human services, agriculture, digital technology, advanced manufacturing, supply chain and transportation, and energy and natural resources. I want to bring context as to why I'm talking about Connecticut Department of Labor today. Our unit in CSDE's academic office primarily focuses on CT programming through the lens of the Perkins grant. To be able to fund CT programs with the grant, they must prepare students for occupations and careers that are high skill, high wage, or in demand, as defined by Connecticut Department of Labor. In partnership with Connecticut Department of Labor, the CSD Perkins team created these definitions. A high skill occupation requires any post-secondary education or training. Connecticut recently moved from using the mean earning across industry sectors to the median to ensure high earning individuals in each sector did not influence the average worker's earnings. This constitutes our definition of high wage. In-demand occupations demonstrate growth across an industry sector over time. It's a top 50% within each career cluster based on the number of job openings. Impact on high school courses and programs. The shift to the modernized framework and alignment of SCED codes repositions existing courses to be more relevant and visible, creates flexibilities and increased student access, creates cohesive pathways that lead to work-based learning opportunities, attainment of industry recognized credentials, and dual credit opportunities. This provides a unique opportunity to elevate and modernize your CTE programs. The new clusters and subclusters will go into effect for the 26-27 school year with the implementation of the new Connecticut Perkins state plan. Going forward, the Perkins grant application will reflect the new clusters and subclusters as well. Support of the new clusters and subclusters must be tied to your comprehensive local needs assessment. The Career and Technical Education Unit will be providing technical assistance going forward. And I'm going to now throw it back to Irene as she has something to add.
Yes, thank you, Sean and Kylie, for sharing the explanation of our why with the transition, and then some eye on the future of how we do this. What I wanted to share with the participants of this webinar is that there is a Q&A feature where you can provide with questions, and Ajit will monitor that in the chat so that we might be able to answer your questions along the way. At this time, I'd like to invite Sam to take us even further to discuss reporting, data collection, and accountability. Thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm Sam Kamen. I'm in the performance office, and I deal a lot with the back end of some of this stuff, both for Perkins accountability, meaning the annual report that goes out at the state level, but then also we're going to talk about some support that we can provide for the CLNA or Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment down the road too. We're going to get a little bit into the nitty gritty on what the actual course crosswalk looks like. So hopefully this is the image on the right here is a spreadsheet that's been already distributed via the memo that went out on March 20th. But if you haven't seen it yet, I think you can click right in this link here inside the PowerPoint. But if you can, I'm going to paste a link in the chat as well. And I'm just going to walk through how to use this spreadsheet, which will help highlight one, where the courses used to be, where they're going now for the new clusters, and just a couple of items of note. So I'm going to steal the share here for a second. Okay, a thumbs up from folks that they can see my screen here, the spreadsheet. Thanks, folks. This is an overview slide, just gives a little bit of information that contextualizes, again, what we've been talking about, but I'm going to jump right into the data here. So we've got three tabs. The first is a summary tab, which highlights, again, the crosswalk between old courses, between the old clusters and the new clusters. So every course that's on a row here reflects a course that was either in the old clusters, the new clusters, or both. Almost all courses that were in the old clusters are in the new clusters now, but there are some that are not, and there are some that are in the new clusters that were not available in the past. For example, you'll see here on row 3, industrial design, that's the SCED code 05191. Is now in the construction new cluster for the 26-27 school year. This was not in any of our clusters prior to this. You'll also see, scroll down, health education or health for parenting teens. These were both in the family and consumer science cluster. These are no longer in a cluster effective the 26-27 school year. So you can go through, see there's hundreds of courses that are available that either were in one or both. Most of them, again, were in both, and you can count, see how many clusters there were that were available. If, for example, you wanted to filter and see all of the courses that were formerly available, you can go ahead and they're no longer available. You could go ahead and just sort of filter here by, say, new cluster count is 0. This is this list of courses that were formerly available in a variety of different clusters that are no longer available now. If you're thinking about sort of thematically grouping the courses, you want to filter by a single cluster. This new mappings tab is going to be where you're going to want to look. You can filter it by any of the existing new clusters. If you scroll to the right, there are more of them available. Say, for example, you'd like to see everything that's available in arts, entertainment, and design. You can just select the X's that are here in this filter. And what you'll have is a list of all the courses that are now grouped together in the arts, entertainment, and design cluster. And you'll notice there's some that are across both. For example, web page design is in both arts, entertainment, and design, as well as digital technology, which makes sense. It's both an arts type course and also a digital technology course. The old mappings, which again are still in place for this academic year and will continue to be in place for all accountability purposes for this academic year for 2025 and 26, are still available here on this old mappings tab if you want to review where the existing SCED courses are mapped to. Thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry if the link wasn't working. It will download as an Excel directly into your downloads folder as it is an Excel file.
I guess
Go
I'm
one
on
more.
now, Sam, is that right?
Yep, you're on, yep.
Okay, all right, very good. Hi, everyone. I see a lot of familiar names in the participant list, so welcome. Good to see those familiar faces. For many of you, this is just kind of a reminder of how Indicator 5 works, but I'll go over it again. So Indicator 5 is one of about 12 indicators in our accountability model. It's our post-secondary preparation indicator, and we've often called it college and career readiness course taking. This is more of the access measure. And so Indicator 5 is going to be calculated at the school or the district level. And we look at the percentage of students in grades 11 and 12 who are participating in at least one of the following during high school. And think of those bullets as sort of separate categories. So we're looking at the percentage of 11th and 12th graders who throughout all of high school have taken either 2 courses in the AP IB dual credit family. Think of that as like an umbrella over that first bullet of course types, or relevant to this session today, 2 CTE courses within the same career cluster. They have to be in the same career cluster, or 2 workplace experience courses in any area. And the target that we have for schools and for districts is to have 75% of 11th and 12th graders meeting one or more of those standards. And that's how we are able to calculate Indicator 5 in Next Gen reports. Know that if your school is below that 75% target, you receive points that are proportional to how close you are to the target. So we kind of think of it as like a sliding scale. It's not all or nothing. You are getting some credit even if you don't hit that target. There are a couple of links to resources on this slide, and they should be active right on your screen. So if you want to go and take a look at those, you can do so. This is sort of like an in the weeds bit that I just want to mention because I know there's some TCS people on the line. When we're looking at those CTE courses, you want to make sure that if you have a student who's taking 2 courses in the same cluster in a year, make sure that those SCED codes for those courses are different, or our system is going to see it as the same course. So in order to get that 2 CTE course credit, we need to make sure we have different SCED codes happening. And so what does the cluster modernization process look like with regard to Indicator 5? Keep in mind that for 25-26, the school year we're in, we're working under the old clusters and the Indicator 5 rules that have been in place since 2014-15. So no change yet. All of these changes that we're talking about are about the courses that students are taking in 26-27 that'll be reported in the 26-27 TCS and will surface in Next Gen reports for 26-27 that usually come out in the fall, so fall of 27. So we got a little ways to go with this. Our advice to schools and to districts is to review those course pairings. If you're getting credit in Indicator 5 for students who are taking 2 courses within a CTE cluster, make sure that if you have one of those courses that maybe isn't mapped to a cluster anymore, or maybe the courses are getting mapped to different clusters, that's really important because when data are reported on the back end, you could potentially see a drop. And we don't want you to be surprised by that, a drop in Indicator 5. So carefully review that information. Again, there's going to be some courses that are no longer mapped to any cluster. For example, and we see these a lot, health education and leadership are no longer mapped to clusters. So if that is what's boosting your school's Indicator 5 value, you want to sort of reevaluate that and take a closer look. Again, some course combinations are no longer going to fall within the same cluster. And there's an example here on the screen for you. And then some new course combinations are going to emerge, which also can be really helpful and make probably a lot more sense in today's day and age. And an example is digital imaging being in the same cluster as web page design. So just kind of some cautionary tales out there to take a closer look at your data and don't be surprised when results come out for 26-27. And if you have questions, please let us know and we can sort of walk you through that process.
And then just to speak quickly to the Perkins accountability side of the house, again, the outgoing methodology, which is what's in place now, will continue to be in place for the 2025-26 school year and will be reflected in the 2026 reporting, was 12 of the 16 federal clusters that have been previously defined, plus the family and consumer science cluster, which is a little bit different than indicator 5 in the past. The new methodology, which again starts in the fall of 26 and will be reflected in the 2027 accountability round, will have the same set of clusters, the same 14 clusters, which Sean and Kylie have been talking about earlier, across both indicator 5 and Perkins, and that includes the consolidated annual report, the CAR, which is what we share at the state level with the federal government, and also your comprehensive local needs assessment, which is what you folks are working on at the district level.
So we know that Family and Consumer Science is a beloved program, and this is an opportunity to really move towards, how do we utilize this coursework that from before and bringing it forward? So how do we utilize the valuable coursework that has been created rather than eliminating it and transition strategically? So we're really appealing to everyone in the district. This goes all the way up through your central office to curriculum designers and the teachers, as well as the superintendent, because this does not mean to eliminate staff or to eliminate programs altogether. It really is about modernizing and looking toward a future where those courses and that coursework can build a whole new pathway for learners and understand how they might be mapped. And again, we'll be providing additional technical support along with some scenarios of courses that you might have in your program of studies, and how might you, with some curriculum renewal, reimagine it as a course that really does now fit in another area. So again, this is not about eliminating programs and staff. This really is about taking that valuable coursework and moving it forward, repositioning it in some existing courses or within the clusters, so you can really now further enhance relevance and visibility. So we wanted to provide you with an opportunity to ask us some questions. Maybe you're thinking further about course alignment or this transition timeline. Maybe you have questions about the new clusters and subclusters. We can talk a little further about the family and consumer science renewal. Again, reiterating impact and outcomes. Maybe you have more questions regarding that because of indicator 5 and impacting the whole of the next generation accountability for your district. And maybe you want to talk about some strategies for district communication. So at this time, we can open it up, or you can utilize the Q&A and ask us some questions. And we'll do our best to answer those.
You can also raise your hand and we can unmute you if you want to ask a question orally as well.
I see some questions are being answered in the chat. Thank you for that. And I see Will has his hand up.
Go ahead, Will.
Hi.
Hi there.
Thank you for unmuting, because I wasn't sure quite how to type this out. Under the old Perkins framework, the requirement, or under the old clusters, I guess Perkins isn't changing. The requirement for a 2-course sequence across 3 clusters, those clusters were pretty specified. So you might have like IT programming and IT UX and IT, like different substrands within that helps schools who might offer 2 large pathways frame those under sub pathways. Do you understand what I'm getting at? For example, maybe it's easier to illustrate with an example. We have an insurance and finance pathway. Within that, in terms of Perkins accountability, we have a course sequence in finance and a course sequence in business. Would you expect under the new framework that a school should have 3 clusters in like large clusters,
Yeah.
like.
So
Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, well, I understand what you're asking. And basically, if we're talking, I'm going to answer this through the Perkins funding lens. So that's where you're going with this, correct? Thumbs
Right.
up if they can't get, okay. All we're doing is the clusters are, you still need 3 clusters represented. And within there, we're asking for you to create a program, a study within that cluster organized by the subcluster layer, when that word used to be called pathway. So it's the same, we're still doing the same like minimum layer of programming. It's just the words are changing. And I think what you're going to find when we release all the courses that are organized by that subcluster layer, that you're going to find a lot more flexibility, because we have mapped several of the courses that you have listed across multiple clusters and maybe multiple subclusters within a cluster. You can't call it 2 things for your Perkins, as you know, you have to fit it into one of those sequences. But you're going to be able to, if you have a course that hinges in 2 different areas and it could be like a 3rd course, you can put it into either one of the 2 areas that you're looking at.
Great, thank you, Sean. And
You're very welcome,
of course,
Al.
those cross-cutting clusters offer a lot of flexibility with that as well.
Yep. And again, all this has been illustrated in our state plan. And I think there were some questions. I think Zakia had a question from Fairfield in the Q&A. It's all kind of hinged together. We cannot release everything to you guys until everything has been approved through all the layers of our approval process within our commissioner and governor, until the state plan is officially approved. Then we can send out everything. But before that even happens, we will send out a ton of resources. But the actual document is embedded into our state plan. So it's not something we can like officially release until it's officially signed off on.
I'm actually going to drop into the chat the draft state plan that can be found on our Perkins 5 webpage, but just for ease of access for those that have not seen it.
Sean or Kylie, would you like to address the question? Are work experiences the same as work-based learning courses? Either one of you? Or if you need more, maybe Renee
No,
can
yeah,
clarify.
Renee, I think I understand your question. And if you look at the link that's above from our response to Dave's question in the chat, these are coded as a subcluster and cluster as part of the new groupings of the spreadsheets. What we don't have yet is a newly like a 1-pager that's aligned to the new clusters, like that link that's posted right now. Those are your workplace experience courses. If a class has a work-based learning element as part of it, you have to look at how you're coding that class. Are you coding it as a strictly workplace experience course, or are you coding it as an academic class that has a work-based learning component to it? And for the indicator for that 3rd bullet point that Renee spoke about within our indicators, it is these workplace experience classes where it is full out workplace experience as part of the SCED code of the course.
That PDF has some courses at the very end, Sean, like miscellaneous things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure those are actually considered, because they don't actually have workplace experience in their title.
Right. Yeah. So as I'm saying, this is the previous one. So I can tell you right now that the 22152, that one we did not map to any of the clusters. It was the mindset that one did not align directly to any cluster, and the idea of employability skills should be embedded into each one of the CT courses that you're offering. If you look at the spreadsheet that Sam put out and you search for the word workplace experience, you're going to see all the courses. They're aligned now to each one of the new clusters.
There's a couple of questions that are in the Q&A section, not in the traditional chat. I just want to make sure we're seeing those folks. There's a question about the alignment.
I'm not seeing those. Oh, actually, there are. I do see them now, Sam.
They pop up as comments underneath, I think.
Yeah, I see them. Oh, thank you for pointing that out, and thank you to those who submitted. We'll address those. When will the revised CLNA document be sent out to LEAs? Let's start with that one.
Take that one. That's a great question. We are the draft of the revised CLNA is actually in the draft state plan that I just posted in the chat that you can, start to look at and get your, ideas in order. There's not much changed with the update, but knowing that we're aligning to the new clusters and subclusters, you will be required to submit a new update with the grant next year.
And yes, Zakia, the presentation slides, the recording will be sent to all individuals who registered for this training here, this webinar. All right, Tracy asks, does the alignment to a cluster happen at the state level or within our PSIS? I know SCED codes are within our PSIS, but do we actually note a career cluster within PSIS? I know Corinne Felder is on the call as well, and I know, Sam, you can handle this as well. I'll just say that the SCED codes are not reported. PSIS is the student enrollment information. The SCED codes and the course enrollments are actually reported through the teacher, course student, or TCS. And Sam and Corinne, I'll let you jump in and expand on that. And Tracy says, I'm covering this meeting for my PSIS coordinator. And she likely knows the answer, but thank you, Tracy.
Okay, so since I unmuted and might be on the run soon, this is Corinne Felder, and I manage TCS, and I know that's what you mean, teacher, course, student. In terms of the clusters, it does get mapped on our end. However, it's very important for districts to understand how it is mapped, so you know exactly where the credit is being given to in terms of the clusters. And Sam, if there's anything you'd like to add?
No, just that it is implicit in the SCED code. So if you're reviewing your SCED codes carefully, this may mean you're offering different SCED codes than you did in the past for similar different course content. Again, those mappings that are included on the spreadsheet that I shared earlier are what we use to determine what's happening in terms of clusters. It's not a requirement to flag it separately in TCS. It's just implicit attached to the SCED.
I think I'll just add that locally, you may call these courses your own local names in your program of studies, but what is important is to look at the content of the course, look at the SCED description, and then figure out which SCED code it maps to best in your system. And that connection is what is key. How do you map the content to the SCED? Because there may not be in some cases, an exact one-to-one match. It might be close, but you might call it a little different name, but it's important to sort of find what is the best SCED match and make that mapping when you report to us.
And Ajit, I just wanted to jump in there for a moment. Sorry, Sam, because I think that's an important point. This isn't just the responsibility of the PSIS coordinator or someone that's responsible for TCS. This is a whole district conversation. That's why I said teachers, even building principals, because mapping out this pathway for learners is critically important. And you want credit for the good work that you're doing. You want to show for it in the other dashboards, which I think you put a dashboard in the chat before, but even just the enrollment of your courses. And then how does this lead to dual enrollment opportunities as well? So I think this is an important undertaking of reading that description, call it what you need to in your own context, but then aligning to that SCED code. So again, that you're building out the right program of studies that does look modern and is marketable to your learners.
And I would also say that if you've done this mapping, if you did this like years ago and you're still continuing with the mapping, this is probably a good opportunity to take a fresh look and just make sure that the mappings still work, that there are some new courses, or perhaps you're fashioning some of these courses a little differently going forward. Now it's a good chance between now and the next school year to sort of just make sure that the mappings that you have are accurate, because we do trust your mapping to make inferences about what kind of learning experiences you're offering your students. So that mapping is key. There is one more question from Taryn Fernandez. Are the industry recognized credentials, talking about IRCs a little bit here, are the industry recognized credentials a requirement in any way in relation to the clusters, or the courses being recognized as a CTE, will they be a factor in accountability, or is there a plan to be a factor in the near future? Taryn, I'll just say right now the IRCs are not part of accountability, formal accountability. Excuse me. We are collecting the industry recognized credential data for the first time this year. That's a little different from what we're talking about here, which is about the course mappings. But at some future point, yes, the hope is that the IRC data will be in a good place that will allow us to incorporate those IRCs within the accountability system so that districts can get credit for students earning credentials of value, sort of akin to passing advanced placement or akin to earning college credit. We want to sort of think about career readiness in that same vein, and IRCs offer a good sort of validated credential. But we want to focus on credentials of value. The list right now is pretty exhaustive, and we don't have any data. We've never collected this, so this is our first sort of salvo at this. But that is definitely in our plan, if you will. But not immediate, but in our plan. The other piece that I wanted to raise for Sean or anybody else on the CTE side is, do you want to speak to how the IRCs relate to the clusters itself? Like, and what is the connection? I know you're working on some things around that.
So we actually do have currently posted on the state's website the current list of IRCs that are mapped already to the clusters. Thank you, Sean. So if you go ahead and click on that and look at that link, it shows vendors, it shows the IRCs that are allowable. We know that's not an exhaustive list. So there's also an IRC application that is linked on that page. So if there is a credential you're offering that you don't see on that list, and you actually know 3 industry partners that recognize that as something that a student would need or a employee would need to work there, you could go ahead and fill out that application. So that way we could review it and have it added to the list.
Kylie, can I go into the chat and ask a question back to Maria? I'm not sure if we answered the question properly, and if Maria could be unmuted, just or a thumbs up on my question back. Do you currently have one culinary arts course and one baking class, or are you calling it one culinary or baking course, and there's only one course for students to sign up for in your hospitality area?
And Maria, if you raise your hand, I can unmute you as well.
That was a great question because I read it as a culinary course and a baking course.
Okay. So Maria and anyone else who's in this same thought pattern here, you currently have a 2-course sequence, and if this was aligned to a pathway already, you should not struggle to align it to a subcluster. And furthermore, that we look at that the subcluster layer for Perkins funding, but bigger picture for indicator 5 that was mentioned earlier is that even if you only had one culinary class, but then you had like a hospitality and event course that was not particularly culinary based, and that one might have fit into a different subcluster, those still fit underneath that same umbrella or the bucket of hospitality, events, and tourism, thus being the new cluster. So the question can kind of be answered in 2 ways. Perkins funding, you're okay. And for indicator 5 reporting, you're okay. However, we do encourage you to grow that pathway even further past 2 courses if that is applicable to your local community.
Maria, it looks like you're satisfied with Sean's answer, but your mic has been, you can unmute your own mic now if you want to come off and ask a question or clarify further. Okay, no worries, but thank you for raising that. Let's see, and Eric Martin had a question too, which we sort of answered, but there is a document that links the IRCs to the courses, right? To our SCED courses. Not yet.
To the clusters on the
To the
on
cluster.
that to the cluster
To the
at the moment.
clusters.
Right. And as
Yeah.
as part of the guidance that we're providing to districts, it's going to be basically from the cluster level to the subcluster level, all the courses that would align into there, the IRCs that would align into there, your CTSO experiences, any branch of CTE is all going to be consolidated into a usable resource for everybody.
So I think there's a question in the Q&A now. I don't think we addressed it. I think it's from Amanda. And maybe
Go ahead,
Tracy.
Irene. Coming fast and furious. Amanda, does the state use the TCS SCED data for year-to-year comparisons? And how will these changes to the cluster affect those year-to-year comparison reports? There are some uses of the TCS data. They include, in the accountability sense, we use it for indicator 5, which we're talking about now with respect to taking 2 or more CTE courses or AP or IB or dual enrollment, things like that, or workplace experience. So from that standpoint, the year-to-year comparison, it's just that the underlying course code mapping is changing. So for this year, 25-26 year, it's still the same as in past years. For 26-27 year, for the next year, the mapping is changing a bit. I mean, it's not a wholesale change, but there are some structural changes. So it's important for you to take a look at that and make sure that your mapping is correct. But besides that, we're not necessarily doing year-to-year analysis on particular SCED codes per se, at a down to a course level. We do look at arts access. Obviously, we're looking at students taking arts courses, which is indicator 12 in our accountability system, not pertaining to CTE, but there we're looking at subject area 5 within the SCED course book, and that really doesn't change much here. Maybe a couple of courses are now in the arts area or whatever, but that doesn't change. And for indicator 7, we use TCS data as well, but there we're really looking at on-track high school graduation, and we're just looking at credits earned. So it doesn't, the SCED code is not really the key there. It's the number of credits that the student earns. So it's the year over year is probably not that big an issue, but let me hold and see if Renee or Sam want to add anything to that particular point about year over year comparisons.
Yeah, I will just say we do report to the federal government, by cluster number of concentrators and things like that, and we do it for multiple years in chunks. So there will be a year where the spreadsheets are going to look a little bit different in between 2 years, because it's going to be one set of clusters in 1 year and a different set of clusters in another. We're certainly paying attention to those numbers across clusters to see where our students in the state are, what kind of courses they're learning from. But I think as Ajit pointed out, it's a lot of the clusters have a really sort of clear crosswalk from point A to point B, and so we can still see those data points. And I think, making a shift that's clear and defined right now means that as we go forward and continue to look at year-over-year comparisons, it's just going to be 1 year that's going to have a little bit of a funky shift to it.
Yeah, and I don't expect that shift to be large either. I think it
Right.
shouldn't be a big shift. But as long as you pay attention to the coding, I think you'll be fine. We had sent the memo a few weeks ago as well, and maybe we can put a link to the memo in the chat as well, Sam. That would be great. Because in the memo we actually spelled out, and it's in the Excel too, explicitly the courses that are not being mapped to any cluster. In the Excel, you can find those courses that are not being mapped to any cluster. That's what you need to make sure that if you have some courses in your local settings that are mapped to one of those courses and you're expecting to get credit for that, and again, this year it should be fine. Next year, 26-27, it won't work. So make sure now is the time to sort of look through that for next year. So please use that time. Tracy had a question. And Renee, I think this one is for you about, can you just clarify what was said earlier about making sure a different SCED code is used for each course that might be of similar content. For example, if you have a level 1 or 2, they may have the same topic but are separate courses. I don't know if you wanted to jump in on that.
Sure. So I'm filling in for my colleague Danielle Bousquet, who knows this with much more in-depth knowledge than I do. But I know I've heard this. She had some notes for me to make sure that I mentioned this to folks on the call, and I know Corinne has come across this sort of issue too. So maybe Corinne has a specific example, but there are times when a student is taking courses similar to what you're saying, Tracy, like a level 1 and a level 2, but the same SCED code is being reported in TCS for that student. That same SCED code is reported twice. To us, that doesn't look like 2 courses. It looks like 1 course. But if you have specific questions about a scenario in your district and you want to try to problem solve how you can report this course in some other way so that you are getting credit on indicator 5, I would encourage you to reach out to me and I will loop in Danielle and we can like dig a little deeper. And Corinne, if you have something to add on this, feel free. I don't know these challenges that we have encountered along the way. I don't have any specifics to share.
I don't know if you could hear me, but I do always refer these types of cases to Danielle.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. All right, Tracy, please reach out to me if you have a specific situation you want to discuss, or if you just want to have a conversation about this sort of word of caution that my colleague Danielle was sharing. And I'm happy to get more information from Danielle and give you some specifics so that you don't run into that problem.
I think it's also important to clarify the duration of the course, the timing, whether it's a semester 1, semester 2. So just if you have all your facts together for Renee, we can absolutely look into this. And Danielle, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, so I was going to say, I agree. I think it could be this kind of half credit phenomenon, maybe. So there's multiple questions even in the chat and the Q&A related to like a kind of like a personal, I see it the personal finance and then advanced personal finance. So since this is coming up a lot, then we'll take this back and we'll try to address this within the resources that we're going to be developing and providing further, along with scenarios and an FAQ. So we appreciate the questions. There's frequency here. We'll take it back and add that to our list of work.
Excellent. I see Liz had that same question, I think, right, with the professional cooking and baking and so on. So I think there's definitely a pattern here that we should look at. I think Danielle, you had your hand raised, so I'll let you jump in here.
Thank you, Ajit. So just the question around timing in respect to indicator 5. So most districts obviously have to have their master schedules pretty much locked in for next year. And so if some of these courses are going to fall out of compliance with getting them to indicator 5, that might create some hardship, or maybe I could envision their indicator 5 taking a downward bump next year as they run the courses they already have planned out before they recoup. And I just wonder if, as you look at it in next year's data, is there a way to soften that blow? As this is, for planning purposes, it's April.
Yeah, I would say, Daniel, I think you're saying that the master schedule for the 26-27 school year is all set, right? That's what you're saying.
For many districts, yes.
Yeah, I think what you will find, hopefully, and if you run into issues, please reach out, is that there will be a way for you to find something else, some other course code, SCED code, that fits the bill of what you're offering, relative to one that's been discontinued. So I expect that you will find something similar that is still in the works. Of course, there will be cases where you will need to reimagine the course and like beef up the content and offer something different. But in other cases, I think you will find other existing courses to which, like maybe you reported health education. And honestly, the reason why we had that health education one was because it was a widely prevalent one. That's why we included that. So I would suggest you look at the rest of the codes and see if something else fits better and is more aligned with this new framework for what you're offering. So, and I put that screenshot in the chat a little while ago for indicators 5, partly to say that we have, that's like an indicator where everyone gets all their points. So it's been one of those indicators that's kind of a gimme indicator, if you will. So we're already, as a state, we're at 92% and our target is at 75%. So even if you go from 92 to 85 or whatever, you're still getting all your points. So it's not really affecting the accountability score, if you will. So take a look, see how it works, and then please reach out. We're happy to help.
Yeah.
And I can speak to that quickly, and I'll speak to Dan specifically on this. And one of the things we identified were maybe some of these courses were not they weren't mapped into enough clusters. And one of those is something that would resonate with you, which is blueprint reading. In blueprint reading, if you read the SCED code, that should have been coded to the previous cluster of manufacturing, but it was only to construction. That is the number one CT state dual credit course in manufacturing, and we couldn't even call that a manufacturing class. You had to call it a construction class. It's now an option for both of those clusters. So to Ajit's point, sure, you may have run into a dead end with a health class that was technically never a CTE class, but now other CT programming that aligns to high skill, high wage, and in-demand positions has multiple touch points for you to end up mapping those out to.
Sean, that's really helpful. Thank you. I'm just thinking as I'm talking to districts and trying to support them in thinking this through, that was a place where I thought they may ask a question. And so I wanted to make sure I was speaking your language on the ground floor for you guys as best I could, right? And that kind of feedback, though, really, I think gets me halfway home. So thanks a lot, guys.
So in the chat, going back and forth between Q&A and chat, now in the chat, there's another question regarding IRCs. So whether that's Kylie or Ajit. From Jennifer Foss. Maybe I'm way off by asking this, but if IRC mainly is for the future, how are we reporting this year in August? Is there an example of IRC that you can give me? Is usually a test associated with IRC?
Yeah, I do see that. Again, we're not talking specifically about IRCs today, but we did send out a notification on IRCs as well that went out, and it went to superintendents, and I'm trying to find that, but I know that Kylie posted the link to the IRCs a little while ago. Those IRCs will be reported through the student achievement module in the teacher core student in TCS. And the student achievement module is how districts currently report seal of biliteracy exam passage. So it's the same data collection module. Okay, Irene's posted that link again. So the list of IRCs that are listed on that site are the ones we're collecting for 25-26. So there is, again, there is an Excel associated with that for the folks who work with data collection, and so that they know. And you can also browse the list by just clicking on list of IRCs, and you'll see the list by these new clusters as well. So for this year, districts report to CSDE through the student achievement module. We will process it through EdSite and report it publicly. It's still not part of accountability. We're still sort of, because we still haven't established which of these IRCs are credentials of value. So that work is happening with a related office in the SDE. Kylie is part of that work. as well. And so they're sort of working on with another group of stakeholders, including the Office for Workforce Strategy and other partners, to sort of come up with credential of value. So once we get our feet wet and with this data and we really understand what information we're getting, I think after that is when we'll be able to make an evaluation of incorporation into the accountability system. So until then, we're collecting the data, we'll report it, and we'll all learn from it and get our process, improve our process.
So with just a few minutes left, I did want to underscore the last bullet on the Q&A. Many folks are here from different, maybe from the accountability side or the school reporting side, but it is critical to take this information back to your district. I saw how someone says for their exec team, because district communication is critically important, that everyone understands this work, and it really is an opportunity to just renew and reimagine. I know those sometimes are overused words, but it's critically important because we're all trying to modernize career and technical education across the state, so much to what Ajit was just sharing. And so please take that back to the district of, yes, there's team communication, but also how is it going up and out to all those that are touching these courses, teaching the courses, as well as helping all others understand of what we're trying to do, including those that are in that school advising role as well. So district communication is just critically important.
And I want to also acknowledge Cynthia Bryan's question and Elaine Taylor's question too. A really interesting question about like when we combine data from 25-26 and 26-27 for 11th graders going into 12th grade, will we use the old mapping for 25-26 and the new mapping for 26-27? I think we'll have to work that behind the scenes. That seems logical. We'll just have to figure out how to make that work. But we'll discuss that as well and be back in touch, because that would be data that you've already reported to us based on the old mapping. So into those respective CTE clusters. And I know there's another question from Dina about personal finance and advanced personal finance. I think, Irene, you referenced that as well. There's a question from Will Cheney about CTSOs. I don't know if you wanted to. Says, are there any plans to expand the list of qualified CTSOs as part of this framework?
It's a good question. Well, I responded just a second ago before Ajit saw that. It's fine.
Okay,
no, it's fine. We, in preparation to move forward with our new state plan in April of 2025, we did send out an RFP in request for organizations who would be interested in being recognized as a CTSO moving forward into our state plan. We did bring in 2 new organizations as CTSOs, one of them being Educators Rising and the second one being ProStart. And we are now getting into implementing this new state plan, and we will consider reopening that application at some point for planning for the next generation and where we're going.
Folks are lobbying, Sean.
Yeah, I know exactly where these are coming from. There's an application process for this, and we have a state plan that's almost knocking on the door of state approval and federal approval, and wedging anything else into this at the moment is not part of our process. And on that topic, we do encourage people who are looking for experiences in CTSOs to look at what we currently have offered. I'm currently the program manager. If you have any questions on how to best implement a CTSO, how to elevate your current chapter, how to elevate the state level chapters of our currently recognized CTSOs, there are wonderful opportunities out there that align to all of our career clusters and meet all of our student needs to prepare them for high skill, high wage, and in-demand careers in Connecticut.
So with that, Renee, do you mind putting the slide deck back up? Because I think our contact information is there. So if you
sorry,
want to
I just told Renee to pull it down so that because we were almost done.
Sorry, we'll just advance. We're going to keep track of the questions that maybe we were not able to answer or those that we've heard with frequency, and we'll follow up, but we are here to help you. So on the last slide, Here are our email addresses if you want to follow up with individuals, and we will do our best to provide support. There will be additional informational webinars specific to CTE and this course alignment, reimagining the courses, and certainly some scenarios that you can work through, and maybe resources that you can take back to district and actually help your team walk through. So thank you for attending this informational webinar. I hope it was informative and at least gets you started in this, this work. And we will be sharing the slides as well as the recording so that you have it so that you can watch us again and certainly share with your team. So again, thank you for joining us and hope this was helpful.